Hello, hello.
Hello, it is Wednesday, and you know what that all means? It means it is Closing Show Live Day. So, Closing Show Live is a weekly live show. We feature the people of Proposify, sales stars in the trenches, and revenue leaders. The Closing Show Live is hosted by me, Nadia Milani, VP of Marketing at Proposify. And every week we discuss the challenges we're facing and the no BS lessons we've learned so you can crush your close rates. So today I'm super stoked. We have an amazing guest, Hannah Ajikawo from Scaled Consulting. And we're going to go deep on discovery questions and asking the right questions to up your closing game. So I'm so excited. And we're giving away a lot of free prizes today, as we always do. So super excited to give away a 30-minute scaled consulting consultation. So I'm going to say that again, a 30-minute consultation with Scaled Consulting and Scaled's free Road to 20 Million playbook. So all you have to do, it's so easy. Just want to remind you, it's super easy. All you have to do is comment in the comment section on LinkedIn or Facebook or anywhere you're joining or anyhow you're joining or any way you're joining us, even if it's YouTube, comment and you'll be entered to win. So I'm super excited to have Hannah here. Hannah, welcome to the show.
Hello, hello. All right. I'm feeling it. Do you like my background? This is
I love the background. You should can you send me like the peg? I gotta update my background. So feel free to send me a copy of it. I love it.
I know, right? I'm loving this. I'm loving this. But no, thank you for having me. You've invited me on to speak about a topic that I can speak about for hours. So I mean, it's risky.
Awesome.
It's really risky.
So I've already kind of previewed a couple of the questions, and Hannah's like, I have a different take on that. So I'm like, I love it. I'm so happy to be diving into this. You are a master at this. And by the way, good afternoon. So you're joining us from the UK today, right?
I am indeed. I'm in Essex and I'm right by the coast. So I'm by the seaside. It's 4:30 here, so it's getting a little bit dark now. But yeah, all good,
Awesome.
all good.
Good morning and good afternoon to everyone that's joining us from all around the world. So let's get to it. We have a lot of questions, and I always say every week this goes by so fast. So I'm gonna hit up the questions. The first one. So why is asking the right question so important in the sales process? Like basic question, but why do you think that getting the questions right are so important?
Yeah, the biggest thing for me is to make sure that you're not dancing on your own as a salesperson, right? So you want to make sure that you've created alignment and you know at all times where the buyer's at. Like, I've got my idea. I've heard a familiar problem or a challenge or something, and you're like, I know how we solve this. But what you really want to do is make sure that the buyer is aligned there. They're in the same space as you, is understanding their problem. They're in the same place in thinking about how to solve it. And then they're in the same place as you when it comes to finalizing the kind of solution and how they're going to approach it. So we ask questions to know where the buyer's at. So that's for me like the main reason why it's so important to continuously go through this like always on discovery process.
It's really about aligning the buyer to what it is that they need. And so like take me through your perspective on what are the right questions. So what are the types of questions you should be asking right from the bat? Do you have like 3 or 4 examples of the good questions to be asking in your discovery call?
Yeah, so I have a different take on it because it could be, you could end up asking 10 questions because you've got someone who's like, I don't really want to tell you much. Or you could ask one and then you've got someone who's, like, someone's asked me that one question, right? So I usually look at it from like trying to look at where they are from understanding their problem and the reason why they're here today, right? So sometimes people are speaking to us because they're just curious. I'm just curious about this thing that you've mentioned. It kind of resonates, and I probably don't have a ton of answers for you, but hey, teach me some stuff, right? So we've got to think about where they are in those buckets from that early stage of raising awareness of an issue, a challenge, or an opportunity through to I've got a plan, I've got a DMU, decision making unit, I've got a budget, I got like, and I know what I'm doing, and we're ready to rock and roll. We know how we're going to solve it. So I look at those kind of that end-to-end journey, and I'm like, okay, let's start from awareness. Like, why are we here? Where's this come from? What's the source or the reason why you have agreed to have this discussion with me? Like, and you might find out it just sounded interesting, or you might find out we have a project going on and they will talk for 10 minutes, or you might find out, you know what? No idea. You had a really aggressive BDR, and I just thought, you know what? I got 20 minutes. Let's rock and roll.
In case you know to your BDR, that's a good problem to have.
There you go. They were very, that person was really, really charming. I've had that. I've had people say, I'm only here because the person who booked the meeting is charming, right? So we want to get to like really understanding why people are in this situation with us at this moment. And we want to keep doing questions. So the right questions are going to help us understand where the buyer's at any given time, right? So I always like to think about questions like, what's happening in your organization, which has made it make sense for you to be here, like to talk about this issue, challenge, opportunity. Is it something that you've kind of figured out, or is it something that's come from the top? Is this related to a critical priority for the business, or was it that marketing campaign that I saw that you clicked on? We just want to kind of get that picture first, because if it's coming from a critical objective, we're like, cha-ching, right? We already got like, was it commission breath? I think is the term, right? Sometimes it's just, you've got people who are just mobilizers. They like to, they're change makers, they're trailblazers. They look at something, it sounds interesting, and they go explore. But until we understand like the context around each stage, it's actually quite hard to work out, okay, so what do I do next? So I don't think that there's people are like, what's that golden question? I'm like, there's a million, but it really depends on the context of why someone is at any stage throughout the sales process. Otherwise, you're just asking random things that mean nothing.
So I'm totally hearing here, like underlying, do not have a script. Like don't go in with a script checklist of like, these are the questions I ask everyone. It's really about understanding the buyer, the customer, what they're going through a bit. So there's probably some research, but don't go in with the script. Is that
safe? That's exactly it. But I know before you're like, what kind of things can you be asking? But what I really want to do, the first thing I want to do when I get into any kind of discovery environment is just place the buyer somewhere. So I don't want to have my assumptions. We talk about like intent. They downloaded a brochure. Okay, so they obviously interested in integration. And they're not. They just wanted to download a brochure. Who knows why, right? But by asking like, why have you done the things you've done and how have you got here? We've placed them and we get them to remove our assumptions and all the ambiguity around things, right? So now they're like, oh, the reason why I'm here is because you sent this or you reached out to this. This sounded interesting because in a team meeting we had on Monday, Claire mentioned that there's this thing that sounds cool and it could help us with this problem. Amazing. All right. Now I kind of know things. Great. Are you in a place now where you start to think about what that could mean to your business? And it's just like, oh, no, we're not that far along. I just thought, you messaged me at the right time. So now I know that I have to have a different kind of conversation, because if they haven't thought about the problem yet, I can't be like, well, our solution helps you do this, this, and this, and it costs this. They're like, I'm not going to be your...
I don't like those calls.
Yeah, someone said to me before I remember my early days, Hannah, I'm sorry, but I'm not going to be your hot prospect this time. And I'm like, oh, that hurt me. But it's because they weren't ready, right? So we really just want to find out, like, where are you? Take the ambiguity out and then be like, okay, now I know what kind of conversation to have with this company.
I love it. Jake Dunlap says, hi, Jake. He says, I like the cabin. Terry Louise says, excited for this. Awesome. We're excited that you're here, Terry. Jen's listening. Thank you. So just a reminder, you can win a 30-minute consultation with Skaled Consulting, which is fantastic. And if you don't know what Skaled Consulting is, go check it out on LinkedIn. They're amazing. Also, they're giving away a playbook, how to scale your business to 20 million. All you got to do is comment. So give us a comment, ask a question. Hannah's here to answer all your discovery questions. Yeah. So you did talk about so a couple things. One is, don't go in with a script. Probably do some research. Know kind of who the company is, who you're speaking to, and really the amount of questions and what you're asking has a lot to do with the person that you're speaking to. So that's why it probably doesn't work. But how do you know your discovery is going well? Like, and how do you know that the questions are hitting? And what do you do when you're not getting the answers that you want in that disco call? So what's your perspective on that and advice? So if I'm a new AE, I'm kind of learning the business, and I'm having these disco calls and they're just not hitting. What's going wrong in that scenario?
Yeah, one of the biggest reasons why an AE will have a discovery call that doesn't, you can feel that it's not going well, is that initial part. You don't know where the buyer is, and you haven't done a good job of just really making sure that this is where you are. Okay, this is what I've heard so far. You told me that you came in because of that meeting that you had with Claire, and Claire said that there's a thing that sounded interesting and you had this problem. You haven't really thought about what this means to your business yet, and you're just here to learn more. They haven't done that. what they've done is said, so Claire said that this is going to be interesting. Great. So let me actually tell you how the things that we do for other companies, they've just gone straight into it. Slow down and just hold the buyer's hand and move them slowly, because they will tell you, you'll feel like some of the friction, and it's fine because we're salespeople, right? So we'll try and use our influence to kind of get them to take action, but just slow down a little bit so you can get the full context. So you'll feel there's a couple of signs where you know that discovery is going wrong. And I find this quite funny, because when I tell sales teams this, they start to really, their antennas are up and they're like, wow, I noticed where this is going wrong. Your prospect can't answer questions, right? So you're asking them stuff, and so an example, like what's the objective this year? We want to grow. Everyone says they want to grow, right? No one wants to shrink. We want to grow our business. Oh, great. Like how much? Oh, the company goal this year is 10%. Right. So what are the kind of initiatives that you're doing this year? Well, we're really only just getting started. Okay. So, what's the role that you're playing? Oh, we haven't had our, our planning meeting for 2023 yet. Oh, okay. So, I mean, typically customers who work with us, usually, and you've lost them, right? That's fine. What you want to do is when they get to that point, be like, okay, I know what happens in this situation, because guess what? I've identified where the buyer is in that kind of awareness, consideration, decision, purchase type journey. And I'm going to give them, and I'm going to ask the support of my business to enable me to support them where they are right now, which is we're just planning for 2023. We haven't been given like our main core initiatives for how we're going to solve for this growth of 10%. However, these are the types of tools and things and stuff that people in my role do at the moment. Like these are the things that are like working well, like just have an exploratory conversation. And maybe there's a guide that you can give them, a template, a questionnaire, which helps them to go internally, like figure out, like, these are the questions that you need to ask your team. This is how you challenge them in the team meeting next week. Like help them have the discussion that helps them buy your solution in the future. They may not be thinking about buying your solution, but help them through their decision-making process. Like that's our job, to facilitate, to serve. But we just get so like, we hear growth, we hear 10%, and we're like, medic's done. Let's go. All right. let's go.
On to the next one.
Yeah, I got this one. Pipeline, 80% commission. That's it. That's where we go.
So, yeah, I've been on those calls. I've been on those calls where, the ones, I'm a buyer, I'm a marketing buyer, and I find that the calls that go really well are the ones that are framed as a conversation. It's a two-way conversation. It's not like I'm in an interview. I'm not, I feel like some of them, the ones that are scripted and the ones that have absolutely.
They're like this.
Right.
Well, you're there, Nadia, and they're like, yeah. So, okay. So where are we? That's literally what happens.
And it's really on the receiving end. It kills the conversation. So it's really being in tune and present in that conversation. That's when I find, as a buyer, those are a lot more successful. And I find like there's value in those conversations, because when it's really positioned as, okay, this is the needs of my business, and these are the needs of what's happening right now. And then the salesperson on the other end is really thinking about that problem and adding value to that situation. That's when my ears get perked up. I'm absolutely excited to have the conversation.
Yeah.
And things are just feel a lot more positive. So I love a lot of the stuff that you've been saying. So I 100% agree. So I want to ask you a little bit about, so right now there's some categories and industries are feeling this more than others, but we are in an economic downturn, right? So we know that there are certain things, SaaS companies that are feeling it. And I'm just curious, because of that, how do the questions change? Do they change at all? Or is it framed more about, does a pricing conversation come up faster? What are your thoughts on that?
For me personally, I'm really leaning into, like, I want to find out, if we're on this call now and we're going through this, we're kind of partway through the sales engagement, maybe we're in the discovery, whatever it is. I really want to find out what senior leadership think about this thing that you're trying to solve, that they're still allowing you to spend time on it. Like, why is this so significant? And I always say to salespeople, you don't have to know everything. Like, your whole point of having this call is to go in and to get Nadia to think about that marketing platform. Like, really think about it, because maybe you're like, you know what? I do have a catch up with them next week. And I don't know how I keep this project on? I don't know. So I need to just sit in that with this salesperson who's supposed to be a trusted advisor and help me really think about, how do I keep this on? How do I really get to the nuts and bolts of it? How do I quantify this? And how do I really dig into when I'm going to get this ROI, how I'm going to get the ROI? People don't usually get to that level. It's like, you're going to get a 10x ROI. Great. When? That's the next thing that salespeople do.
The average number of 10x.
Yeah.
I believe it when it's like 7.2x, then I'm like, oh, 7.2, that's interesting.
Exactly. Yeah. But yeah, I mean, so yeah, I want to really help you to get to that ROI piece, but more specifically about the realization of that. I think that, you know, that's where real value is found, right? When you can understand like what goes into it. So it's great that I can get a 7.2x return. What do you need from me now that half my team's laid off to get to that 7.2%? So I, as a trusted advisor / salesperson, our job now during this time is to help people to realize ROI and be truthful about it. Like, no, I mean, if your team were taking on most of this, it would have been 7.2 right now. If I'm looking at the numbers, the resources involved, you're going to need our professional services team to really make it happen. It's going to be like a 3x return. We're going to really struggle to get to 7.2. Can that still work in relation to the return that you're trying to see internally? Like, do the numbers add up? Like, you need to help the buyers have that conversation. So we really need to get down to the numbers, because we're not going to be having wishy-washy, let's see if it happens sales at the moment. It really needs to make sense for the bottom line.
It's also about like sense of urgency too. Like it's prioritizing who you're having conversations with, who have a sense of urgency for the product that you're selling. So if, for example, the marketing team got completely cut and there's only like 2 marketers, all of a sudden, any tools that help scale their work becomes like a thing, right? And so I think that it's also important to contextualize, okay, what's the problem you're experiencing, and why is this product important now to you? And I think if you can't have those conversations right now, you're probably wasting your time as a salesperson.
Exactly.
I mean, hot take, I don't know, like maybe controversial take, but like don't even waste my time on a call if you can't tell me why I need this in 3 months. Like, why is this priority, especially at the end of the year? Like, why is this a priority now? Why can I not wait until Q1?
And exactly that. And that's why I hate when it's like end of month discounts. We're on exactly the same page. I really want to understand if you have already like made sense of why it's a priority, because I can tell you why it's a priority, but I can't persuade you. You're going to be resistant to that. Like, that's how psychologically how our brain works. You need to come to that decision yourself, which is actually, you know what, Hannah, now that you've spoken about it, half my team's gone. This tool's going to help me get this campaign and this stuff out, you know, in half the time. That means this impact on campaign results. Our average conversion is this. It makes sense for me. Yeah, but I can help you with that. I can help you because I've had that discussion more times than you. As a salesperson selling a solution to your audience, probably have that conversation 50 times a week, right? So I can help you do that, have that conversation. But that's what I was talking about before in discovery. Where are we in the buying process? Help you to understand, quantify, validate your problem, challenge, or whatever. So it makes it easier for you. You shouldn't have to sell to yourself. I should help you make that decision. But that's the things that I'll be focusing on for like the conversations now.
Amazing. So I'm just curious, like recently, have discovery calls changed for you? Like, have you noticed a change? Like, have you had to change your tactics and like what you're asking, and like what subtle changes have you been making?
that piece that we're talking about, right? Which is like that when they're going to see, when am I going to realize this value, right? And I had that. Someone asked me 2 weeks ago, Hannah, when do we see the return on all of these changes we're making to our sales process and our methodology? Right. I said, well, it takes about 2.5 months just to develop a new habit, and you've got a relatively decent sized sales team. So what we're going to look at is some of the leading indicators that show that they're doing the activities. We know what the impact is if they're doing it right and better, because we've worked with over 1,000 companies here at Skaled. However, our first big job is to get people doing it. So like, this is the role that you're going to play in getting the salespeople to do the new stuff. And this is the role that we're going to play. But that helps them. And they're like, okay, cool. 2.5 months. That's going to be the point when we're like, are they doing the stuff? Because we can then predict the conversion rates, because we already have like benchmarks there.
I'm like a firm believer that you learn a lot more about the mistakes you've made or things that have gone wrong than versus when things have gone right. So I'm just curious, like for you, have there been any discovery calls? You've probably been involved in a lot over your career. that just went wrong and it like stumped you and like you just couldn't get like either past it or it surprised you. And I'm just curious if you could break it down, like what happened in that particular and how you were able to either turn it around or maybe you didn't turn it around. I'd love to hear an example like that.
A one where it's, so you're saying when it like stumped me, it didn't go to plan.
Yeah, like you had, so maybe it was like you did your research and then it just didn't go the way you wanted it to or thought it would. Maybe you've done a similar disco call with the same industry, same type of buyer, and it just like I'm gonna use this like awesome word, bamboozled you, like just completely like threw you off.
You know what? And this is why I made a distinction between understanding where the buyer is. I remember meeting with it was somewhere in Slough. I met with a big they were like a technology and research house. This is in the UK, sorry. And I spoke with one person who was like mid-level management, and it went well. We got on well as well. So he invited his whole team, right? So there's little me in my suit, turn up to the meeting, all of the stakeholders in the room. I gave them it was much more of initially like, let me just give you the big story and why we're here, like the big vision, right? And kind of mapping it backwards to where they are with what they're doing. The big thing that I didn't do, which is what I teach salespeople to do now, is check to see where they were in understanding their own situation, right? So one of the things you asked me earlier is what's some of the questions that you can ask. I am a fundamental believer that BDRs, SDRs at the very first stage when they're setting up a meeting for an AE should be asking, just want to kind of get a feel for where things are for you. So we make sure discovery makes sense at like the next stage, like on a scale of 1 to 10, where are you in your own like internal evaluation of what you should be doing, what you're thinking about. Without doing that, you go in and you have the best kind of like, I know my product inside out, I've sold to all of their competition. We just assume that social proof will do the job, right? So we're in this meeting and everyone's just like, yeah. So, and this is what you hear, right? We're going to go away and think about this and we're going to kind of like walk through it and we'll come back to you. Never. They never come back to you. But that's because I could have, having all those stakeholders in the room, we could have just spent the whole time, if I asked that question on a scale of 1 to 10, where are you all in like really researching this issue, this opportunity, right? And they would have been like, you were the first person that's ever brought this to our attention. And I would have been like, perfect. This hour is going to be going through how you currently work, where the bottlenecks are in this process, the people that are involved, the kind of solutions that you use, all of the workflows. And we're going to identify 2 things that we can fix here. Working with
maybe it's like different for each. I mean, you give all the stakeholders in the room. It could be that like half the room is like 5. I don't really care about this. And then some of them are like 8. And then you can kind of feel out like where is the misalignment. And then that's a really great conversation starter. Like how to bring everybody together on that particular problem. I love it. So how did you like fix the process? So you got there, you had all the stakeholders, and then you didn't ask the question. So was the meeting over, or how did I want to know the end of the story.
The meeting went great. The meeting went great. It was they were like, wow, super impressive. That was great. Fantastic. I've never heard of this before. Like we didn't think about the problem in this way. And this is great. And wow, the guy's name was Chris. Chris, thanks for coordinating. And then I was just chasing Chris. I'm sure it's still in Salesforce from 2013. And it's just as an open op, that's just never happened. And it's still going like, call me back in 6 months. But that's because 2 things. I didn't know where they were in figuring things out or even understanding their problem. And I didn't know how important it was. That's 2 things, right? Like, where are you? And in the room, to your point, all the different stakeholders, who ranks this as like top 10, top 2 priority? Who ranks this as like bottom 2? Right. And then you're like, let me split the room. Okay, we're going to have separate meetings. But what we do is we think discovery is just a noun. It's a name of one step in the process, and we do it once, and that's it. And then after that, we're like, oh, I don't know what to do. But lots of mini discoveries always on will really get you to not have conversations where people say it was fantastic, but call me back in 6 months.
Yeah, no, I remember. Yeah, that's absolutely true. That is it's such a good point, is that discovery doesn't happen on one. It's not one meeting; it's several meetings. Depending on the industry, the company size, how many stakeholders involved. It could be a series of meetings with different people involved. Hopefully it's everyone all in the same Zoom call or whatever you use. But you're absolutely right. Like it could be multiple discussions. It's making sure you're getting to the answers and the urgency and the value and the business partner that you need to be to get to the close, essentially. But you mentioned something that's really interesting on the SDR component. So discovery, the first step is really the SDR and the BDR or BDR, depending on
in most cases. Yeah.
So what questions should they be asking to set the discovery call up correctly and just really making it, setting it up for success, essentially?
And there's going to be different ways that that company has come to them, either cold outreach or some kind of inbound. So land that first, like, thank you for, you came to me because of this, I reached out, or you downloaded this, whatever it is. Get over those things. Just do that scale question. I promise you, every time you get through the niceties, just say like 0 to 10, 10 being completely there, 0 being quite new. Where are you? And then you can start, that we're at 2, all right, or we're at 4, all right. Like, what does that actually mean? Because it's just a subjective term, but they're telling you and now defining, like, a 4 to us based on what you've said, Hannah, kind of means like we had a few meetings internally. We actually did a trial of something last year, and all of these things come out without you saying, have you done a trial before? Do you have a budget? Is there an authority? What's the need? They are going to tell you because you've helped them open up a bucket, which is a nice open question. And then, like, tell me what 4 means. Tell me what 5 means, right? And now you're like, okay, brilliant. And imagine all that information you can pass your AE. By the way, they're not ready to buy. Like, this question is, they're quite early on. There's a decision maker who's actually, he did a trial. He also used to work for the competition. You can get all this stuff out by just understanding where you are. What have you done so far?
Amazing. So this is like crazy because it's like almost a time. I'm telling you, the 30 minutes goes by really fast, but I just wanted to add last question.
Yeah.
Amazing, Hannah. You and I actually haven't met before this call. You can probably sell me on anything.
Let's go. Right. I
just love the energy. It's amazing. So before we end, I just what is like one takeaway you want to leave the audience with? They're trying to close they're trying to, I mean, depending on what industry you're in, it's going to be maybe hard to close in the quarter. But what do they need to know about discovery? If there's one takeaway to execute a great discovery process, what is that one takeaway?
It's a little bit around the status quo. Make sure that your prospect has agreed that your type of solution is the way they're going to go about solving for their challenge. Because if they're still at a stage inside that discovery where they're like, we're going to solve this problem, however, we're thinking about hiring someone to solve it. This is not a 75% chance of closing. This is very early on because they haven't yet said we are in a decision phase where we know how we're going to solve the problem, which is I need to get to my son's school. I can take a bicycle or a car, right? There's 2 options. Is it just cars? And now I've got 20 cars to choose from. Or am I still looking at different modalities of how I'm going to do it? You have to make sure that they're like, we've dismissed every other option. We are only going to choose this type of approach to solve it, because now your competition is just 2. It's not the status quo or like a person or an offshore entity. It's just between you. And now you can go head to head and identify your differentiators. You can't differentiate against every single other thing that is a possibility. You have to get to that stage. That's what I'd say is critical. That's where deals die.
Love it. There you have it. Hannah Ajikawo, thank you so much for joining us today. You're a pro, and I thank you for all the knowledge shared. This has been amazing. So join us next week for another Closing Show Live. Jeff Bajorek will be here joining us to tell us how to sell like you. If you're online right now, there's another live happening. Go to Riveting's LinkedIn page and join a special Whiskey Wednesday LinkedIn Live with Justin Welsh starting in 1 minute. So if you're still looking, I know. If you're still looking for something great to listen to, I highly recommend it. Otherwise, see you at the next one. Thanks everyone for joining us today. Bye for now.